Okay, so this is going to be all deposition material today. And we are starting with warm-up. I am Mr. Haight for the plaintiff.
I am the witness.
I am
Defense one.
Defense 1, Mr. Marsh.
I am attorney for defense 2, Ms. Nicely. Nicely. Be nicely.
And let's make this in, starting in 15s, which will be 200. Then when we get to page 9, the 6-minute mark right above the halfway point, let's go up to 14s. And someone chatted in something, and this is true. I noticed this when I was doing the form for the passport. They don't want to smile. You can't smile on your passport photos.
Really?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Hmm.
And that must be just changed, because my old passport, I
got it up here.
dug it out, and the smile. They don't want teeth for some reason. Okay, when we get to the 9-minute, page 13, 9-minute, let's go up to 13s at the end. Just a short sprint at the end, maybe. Actually, do it for a short time. Did you get that 9-minute mark?
13.
So 13s.
13s, and then at on page 20, the first time mark there, let's go all the way back down to 15s. First time mark, right after or right before the womb.
Gotcha.
Okay, here we go. On the record, starting in 15s, Mr. Haight questioning on the record. What is the information that you wrote down in your own handwriting?
You want me to read it?
I sure would.
Okay, he vomited ×2 in the ambulance that his skin trigger was poor. He had a bandage on his left forearm. He was a poor patient, poor historian. I was unable to contact his wife to take patient home. Patient was taken by ambulance to son, Ray's home in Chico. He had a history of arthritis with contractures, congestive heart failure, shortness of breath.
Never mind.
Did you also chart the blood pressure, pulse, respiration, and temperature?
No,
Who did that, if you know?
I don't know.
You signed your name down at the bottom of the form, is that correct?
Yes,
Other than what you've just read and your signature below, is there any other part of that form which we're looking at, the emergency room record form dated 5/21/01, signed by Dr. Volks, is there any other part of that form that you yourself filled out?
yes,
What else?
that I gave a Tylenol suppository and an IM Compazine 10 milligram injection.
Anything else that you filled out?
That he was taken to his son's home by ambulance at 3:45 on 5/22/91.
Where is that noted?
At the bottom. Okay, where are the
Where are the medications?
under medications right here?
Okay, just those 2 lines are in your handwriting, is that correct?
No,
What else is in your handwriting?
no, the handwriting, the Tylenol and the Compazine were not written down by me. Just the signature and the time that I did give the medication.
Oh, I see. Okay, anything else on that form that was written down by you?
No,
No other initials or anything else?
no,
Now, with regard to the Tylenol, what time was that given?
220.
In the morning?
Yes,
And that was a suppository. What do you mean by suppository?
What does she mean by a suppository?
Yes, if you could just put that in lay language for us.
Tylenol in suppository form, which is inserted into the rectum.
Okay. What was your understanding as to why that was ordered, if you had an understanding?
To bring down the 102.2 temperature
And when the temperature of 102.2, when was that noted?
at 11:40.
Is there any indication on this form or any other records you reviewed that the temperature was taken at any later time?
No,
Do you know whether the temperature was taken at any later time?
I don't remember.
Was it standard practice to take the temperature of patients in the emergency room periodically?
Not that I am aware of.
Was it standard practice to take periodic temperatures where the temperature was 102.2?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay, was there a reason why the Tylenol suppository was not actually given until 2:20 in the morning?
Well, I am going to object. I don't think there is any indication as to exactly when the order was given. If she knows of a reason why there was that interval between admission.
Can I guess?
No, don't guess.
Then I don't remember.
Okay, do you happen to know when the order for the Tylenol suppository was made?
No,
What time was the compazine given?
at 2:20, oh, at 2 o'clock, I'm sorry.
Okay, what was the purpose, if you know, for giving the compazine?
To prevent further nausea and vomiting?
And that was an injection?
Yes.
And where was the injection, and what part of the body?
Left, I can tell you definitely. I honestly don't remember what the AGS is. I know where I give injections normally, but I honestly can't remember what the initials stand for.
Where do you normally give injections?
I can show you right here.
Right in the hip area?
Yes,
Did you actually did you write 0 to 100 in for the actual time that you gave the injection?
yes.
Now, when you made these initial nurse's notes, vomited 2 times in ambulance, what was your source of that information?
From the EMTs?
They told you that?
Yes,
When you indicated skin turgor, poor, was that by observation, your own observation?
well, you pick up the skin and let it go, and if it stays up for longer than a few seconds, then you say the skin turgor is poor. Yes,
So you actually picked up the skin and noted that it stayed up for longer than a few seconds,
yes,
and then charted that entry?
yes.
In your training and experience, was that a significant observation
Significant to whom?
to you?
To me?
Yes,
Yes,
it was significant in the fact that elderly people's skin turgor is not as good as young, and quite often skin turgor will be poor when people are dehydrated. And that's what dehydration is a symptom of, if you know,
the symptom?
a sign of.
That calls for a medical opinion. I'm going to object.
Go ahead.
I am going to instruct her not to answer. I don't think there is any foundation that she can speculate what the causes of very general symptoms are and the diagnosis that you would establish.
I'm not asking for a diagnosis, and I don't want to have to bring her back to court and have a hearing on this.
I don't want you to.
All right. With regard to dehydration, just answer with a yes or no. Do you know from your training and experience what dehydration is symptomatic of?
Well,
I am going,
I am going to object on the same grounds. She may know some symptoms of what dehydration indicates and what kind of diseases that is consistent with, but you're asking her a very general question, and it calls for a narrative, if I understand the question correctly.
Are you instructing her not to answer?
I am instructing her not to answer that one.
All right.
I want to state an additional ground for the objection. I am objecting on the grounds that the question is improperly phrased and that it does not specify whether you're referring to, one, whether you're referring to the dehydration being a symptom of one particular type of thing, or two, whether you're referring to it as requesting a list of symptoms of what it could be symptomatic of, and on that basis it does call for a narrative answer or is vague and ambiguous in the alternative.
With regard to Mr. Pierce, as you observed him, did the fact that the skin turgor was poor suggest anything to you based on your training and experience?
Other than what she's already testified?
Yes.
I don't think I understand the question.
Okay. Did you attribute any significance based upon your training and your experience to the fact that Mr. Pierce's skin turgor was poor?
It just confirmed to me that he had been vomiting.
Okay, nothing beyond that?
No,
And vomiting would cause dehydration?
it could.
Okay, you noted in your nurse's notes there was a bandage on the left forearm.
Uh-huh.
Why did you chart that?
I think it's called cover yourself. You know, I didn't want someone to think that he came into the emergency room and sustained an injury in which we bandaged.
I see.
So that he came in with it.
Was this a Band-Aid, or was this something more extravagant, something more elaborate?
I honestly don't remember
You
it.
charted patient, poor historian. What do you mean by that?
I mean, when I asked him what brought him into the hospital, he really didn't give me an answer, and he did not know what medication he was on, which is a routine question to ask a
Did
patient.
he appear to understand your questions?
Yes.
Did he appear confused?
No,
Did he respond appropriately?
When he responded,
he didn't respond when I asked him what brought him into the hospital or what medications. He did respond appropriately when I asked him if he was warm enough or he wanted a drink of water.
Did you ask him what brought him into the hospital on more than one occasion?
I don't remember.
Did you ask that question more than once when you...
I don't remember.
Did you ask him what medications he was on more than once?
I don't remember.
So just so we're clear on this, did you, after discovering he was a poor historian, go back later and try and elicit or obtain this same information from him?
I don't remember.
When was it that you made the notes we've just gone over? Was that, if you can give us any time frame? Apparently, Mr. Pierce had his vital signs taken at 23:40 in the evening. First of all, let me ask you this. Would the vital signs normally be taken fairly promptly upon arrival at the emergency room?
Yes.
Is that one of the first things that's done?
Yes.
Are the nurses, I'm sorry,
That's okay. Is the initial intake of information, the vomiting, the skin turgor and Band-Aid and the poor historian, is that something that is normally done promptly upon arrival at the emergency room?
Yes.
Can you give me a time as to approximately when that was done?
No.
Would 23:40 in the evening on the 1st of May have been approximately the time that was done?
Yes.
Was Mr. Pierce conscious at the time you spoke to him?
Yes.
Was he sleepy?
Yes.
Was he drowsy?
Isn't that the same?
I think it is. I withdraw the question. Was he sleeping periodically as you observed him?
What do you mean by periodically?
You'd wake him up and ask him a question. He'd respond, then go back to sleep.
Yes.
And then if you needed to disturb him, he'd wake up and then go back to sleep.
Yes.
Did you have occasion to observe Mr. Pierce after you charted these nurses' notes that we've gone over?
What did you mean by have occasion?
Ambiguous.
Did you see him from time to time?
Yes.
Did Mr. Pierce continue to be sleepy?
Yes.
Did he continue at any time that you observed him? Did Mr. Pierce drift into a deep sleep?
No.
Did you have occasion to talk with him later that day, later that night?
Yes.
For what purpose?
Ask him if he wanted water, if he was comfortable.
How many times, if you can recall, that evening would you have talked to him? Did you talk to Mr. Pierce?
From the minute he got there until he left, I'd say 5 or 6
I
times.
take it one of your jobs would be to look in on Mr. Pierce periodically.
I actually stayed in the room with him.
Okay, how long did you stay in the room with him?
You stay there all night.
Other than responding to your requests, was Mr. Pierce sleeping?
Yes.
At any time did Mr. Pierce fail to respond to one of your communications to him, that is, failed to look at you or open his eyes?
No.
Did you observe Mr. Pierce in the 5 or 10 minutes immediately before he left the hospital?
Yes.
What was his condition immediately before he left the hospital?
From your observation.
Yes, from your observation.
He was drowsy
And why do you say that?
because I woke him up before he went into the ambulance.
Did you have any conversation with him at that point?
I believe I would have told him that he was going to go down to his son's.
You believe, don't guess.
You're not sure?
I'm not, I say I'm sure, I really would. I wouldn't just have him transported onto a gurney and say, see you later. I think I always let my patients know where they are
Do
going.
you have a specific memory of his making any response?
Besides looking at me, no,
No, he didn't make any response?
not that I
To the
remember.
best of your recollection, his only response was to look at you?
Yes,
He didn't utter any words?
not that I remember.
At that point in time, do you recall asking him any questions?
No,
At that point in time, do you recall his uttering any words to you?
no,
After you told him he was going to his son's home and he looked at you, was there any further communication between you and him?
no.
Did you have an opportunity to observe him any further past that point in time?
I don't know if I know what you're asking.
Okay, did he go back to sleep?
No.
What did he do?
He was transported over to a gurney and taken into the ambulance.
How long was he on the gurney? Just briefly, momentarily?
Yes, just long enough to have him on the gurney and get him in.
Do you know whether he was asleep on the gurney?
I don't think so.
Do you know?
Thank you.
We're only talking about a 2-minute period of time, I'd say. No.
Why did you say that?
If you were moved by a sheet and put on a gurney and 2 seconds later taken out to an ambulance, that's not much time to get back to sleep.
But did you observe him on the gurney?
Yes.
You, yourself?
I helped move him over. Yes.
And after he was on the gurney, did you observe whether his eyes were open or closed?
I can't honestly say. I don't remember.
And then shortly after he was put on the gurney, he was placed in the ambulance?
Immediately. Yes.
And the purpose of placing him on the gurney was to put him into the ambulance?
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, that's a yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And from that point on, you had no further observations of Mr. Pierce?
No.
Was Mr. Pierce pale?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Whitish color.
To the best of your knowledge, is that charted anywhere in the notes?
No.
Do you know why?
Are you asking her to speculate as to why Dr. Volks or whoever had written that?
No, I'm asking you if you know why it's not charted.
I think that calls for speculation.
Don't speculate. If you don't know, you can just tell me.
It's a yes or no.
No.
You don't know?
No.
Would that normally be something that a nurse would be expected to chart?
Yes.
Is there any reason why you didn't put that down in the nurse's notes?
No.
Is that a finding of some significance as a nurse?
I'm going to object. It calls for speculation. She can answer if she can.
Go ahead.
I'm also going to object to that question that it's ambiguous. Do you mean the fact that he was pale was of some significance, or the fact that she didn't note it was of some significance?
The fact that he was pale, was that a condition of some significance to you as a nurse?
I object. The word pale is vague and ambiguous. Pale as compared to what?
She's already told us what she means by pale, so
I don't think she has.
Was the fact that Mr. Pierce was pale or had a whitish color, was that a fact of significance? A fact that had some significance to you as a nurse?
Yes,
Why?
because if he was a completely healthy person, he'd have more pink color to his face.
Did Mr. Pierce feel warm to the touch?
I don't remember.
Was he sweaty?
I don't remember that either.
In your experience as a nurse, did Mr. Pierce appear to be sick?
Yes,
In your experience as a nurse, were you surprised that Mr. Pierce was being discharged from the hospital that night?
I think the reason the witness is having trouble answering it, it's surprised. What do you mean by surprised? It's vague and ambiguous.
yeah, I'm having trouble with surprise.
It's not her job to be surprised or otherwise.
Let me ask you, what was your reaction to Mr. Pierce's being discharged that night?
My first reaction was I was concerned about who was going to be taking care of him, that I didn't feel this was a gentleman that should be taken home and left alone.
Why did you say that?
Well, because of the contractures, I felt that he was not able to get up and walk to the bathroom and get a drink of water and feed himself. I didn't feel he could take care of himself, quite frankly, so I was concerned on where he would be going to be taken care of.
And you're talking about the contractures from the arthritis?
Yes,
And what did you observe by way of contractures?
that he stayed in the fetal position.
Was he in the fetal position virtually the whole night?
Yes,
Was he in the fetal position when you first observed him?
yes,
By the fetal position, just so we're clear, you mean curled up like a baby would be in the womb?
on the side, yes.
And was he in the fetal position at the time you had occasion to help him move onto the gurney?
Yes,
He had been all that time that he had been in the hospital or the emergency room?
yes,
Now, other than strike that, did you attribute his being in the fetal position to the rheumatoid arthritis or to the contractures?
To the extent that may call for a medical opinion, I am going to object.
All right, let me rephrase that. I asked you to describe the contractures, and you mentioned that Mr. Pierce had been in the fetal position.
uh-huh.
Can you give me any better or a more complete description of what you meant by the contractures?
The only thing I can think of is that he never straightened out his legs or arms. He remained in that position the whole time.
Did you infer from that he could not straighten out his legs and arms?
Calls for speculation.
I'm asking what you did do.
Well, I certainly did try to straighten them out.
Did you observe anything else by way of contractures?
No,
Now, I note on the emergency room instruction sheet, do you have this page in front of you?
yes,
Okay, just so we're clear on what we're talking about, at the bottom it says Form 27-B, Feather River Hospital, Emergency Service Aftercare Instructions for Pierce Patrick L. Someone wrote in at the lower right-hand corner, patient unable to sign. Is that your handwriting?
it is.
Why did you write that?
I don't remember.
Is there a particular set of circumstances at which you would customarily and commonly write that phrase?
I'm going to object. I think the record speaks for itself. The note says patients unable to sign. I think that's the set of circumstances where she'd write that down.
Okay, Mr. Pierce wasn't able to sign the instructions, is that correct?
Yes,
And that's why you charted that down?
yes,
And he wasn't able to sign the instruction. Did you orally read any of these instructions to Mr. Pierce?
I don't remember.
With regard to these instructions, were they transported with Mr. Pierce?
Yes,
If instructions, strike that. When instructions were given to a patient at Feather River Hospital in May of 1991, who normally would present those instructions to the patient?
I would.
You would?
Yes,
That would normally be your job?
yes,
And with respect to Mr. Pierce, that normally would have been something you would have done?
yes,
In fact, was Mr. Pierce in no condition to receive a set of detailed instructions such as those in front of you?
I'm going to object as calling for a medical opinion to the extent that it may call for a medical opinion as to this witness. Also, the characterization of detailed instructions. I don't know if that's fair.
I join in that objection.
Okay. We went up to 210 and some at 220 in there, and then at the end it was back down to 200. Okay, that's done. Let's do, I think I'm going to do the CSR first. Okay. So former CSR witness copy, defense 2, defense 1. And I had to dig way back. Believe it or not, there's not too many depot CSRs. And we've recently done the more recent ones. So this is from June of 2001. And we have, let me double check something. This doesn't look right to me. Okay, so we have 2 minutes of warm up and then we're going to do a 13-minute exam. I am Mr. Thompson for the plaintiff.
I am the witness.
I am Mr. Hopkins for defense 1.
Attorney for defense 2, Pamela Smith.
We're reading every other mark, the bigger marks in 15s, but let's read this 2 minutes in 14s. Okay? We'll do this 2 times, the 2 minutes. On the record, Mr. Thompson in colloquy. The record should reflect who is present for this deposition. Present today, we have the witness, Alex Baxter. Thank you for coming today, ma'am. I will state for my appearance for the record at this time, I am Gregory Thompson, attorney for the plaintiff in this case. Counsel, why don't you state your appearances for the record at this time?
Yes, thank you. William Hopkins, attorney for the defendant, Olive Garden Restaurant.
Good morning. I am Pamela Smith, attorney for the defendant, 5 Star Cleaning Service.
All right, thank you. Before we begin with the questioning this morning, is there anything that we need to put on the record?
No, I don't think so. I do have questions, but I will wait my turn.
Oh, yes, I understand. I meant before we started.
I don't have anything before the questioning other than to see if the witness has any questions of us before we begin.
No, I don't. I just came because of the subpoena.
That's right. Mr. Thompson subpoenaed you today for the purpose of taking your deposition. But I believe we will probably all have a few questions for you due to the litigation between Mr. Sinclair and the Olive Garden.
All right.
Well, if there is no objection, then let's go ahead and start.
Yes, that's fine.
The witness has already been sworn. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good morning, ma'am. Would you please state your name for the record?
Alex Baxter.
Ma'am, we are here today for the purposes of taking your deposition regarding the case of Mr. Rick Sinclair versus Olive Garden Restaurant and 5 Star Cleaning Service.
I understand that.
I am representing Mr. Sinclair in his personal injury lawsuit, and I have some questions for you. You have already been sworn. I will advise you to please let me know if you don't understand any of my questions so I can rephrase them. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you have any questions before we begin?
No, I don't.
Ma'am, it is my understanding that you were present at the restaurant and observed an accident on December 31, 1998. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Do you remember what time you arrived at the restaurant that evening?
I believe we got there about 5 o'clock. It might have been a little bit earlier than that, but we were supposed to meet there at about 5.
Personal injury, PIJ? Physical injury, FIJ? Okay, one more time with the warm-up. Here we go. Same way, 14. The record should reflect who is present for this deposition. Present today, we have the witness, Alex Baxter. Thank you for coming today, ma'am. I will state my appearance for the record at this time. I am Gregory Thompson, attorney for the plaintiff in this case. Counsel, why don't you state your appearances for the record at this time?
Yes, thank you. William Hopkins, attorney for the defendant, Olive Garden Restaurant.
Good morning. I am Pamela Smith, attorney for the defendant, 5 Star Cleaning Service.
All right, thank you. Before we begin with the questioning this morning, is there anything that we need to put on the record?
No, I don't think so. I do have questions, but I will wait my turn.
Oh, yes, I understand. I meant before we started.
I don't have anything before the questioning other than to see if the witness has any questions of us before we begin.
No, I don't. I just came because of the subpoena.
That's right. Mr. Thompson subpoenaed you today for the purpose of taking your deposition. But I believe we will probably all have a few questions for you due to the litigation between Mr. Sinclair and the Olive Garden.
All right.
Well, if there's no objection, then let's go ahead and start.
Yes, that's fine.
The witness has been already sworn. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good morning, ma'am. Would you please state your name for the record?
Alice Baxter.
Ma'am, we are here today for the purposes of taking your deposition regarding the case of Mr. Rick Sinclair versus Olive Garden Restaurant and 5 Star Cleaning Service.
I understand that.
I am representing Mr. Sinclair in his personal injury lawsuit, and I have some questions for you. You have already been sworn. I will advise you to please let me know if you don't understand any of my questions so I can rephrase them. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you have any questions before we begin?
No, I don't.
Ma'am, it is my understanding that you were present at the restaurant and observed an accident on December 31, 1998. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Do you remember what time you arrived at the restaurant that evening?
I believe we got there about 5 o'clock. It might have been a little earlier than that, but we were supposed to meet there at about 5.
Okay, this is going to be a 13-minute take, and actually I'm going to have to stop and restart my, excuse me, my